Welcome, everyone, to edition 5 of SEL in EDU. 5. Yes, we're working along. And we are with an extra special guest today because she is also an ASCD emerging leader. We have Dr. Amanda Koonlaba with us. She is an educator and artist with experience in both the visual arts and regular education courses. Her career is driven by the power of the arts to reach all learners. And for all of you who are watching and listening, I am so excited that I get a chance to see Amanda live because she and I have been talking on social media, and I know that she has such a deep love and passion for integrating social emotional learning into the arts. So thank you, Amanda, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amanda, would love to just kind of start off with, this passion you have, and you do so many amazing things for so many young people and the adults around them. And would love to just kind of learn a little bit more about how that looks for you. How does SEL, how does the work that you do serve you today?
Well, that's a big question. I started my career teaching like first grade. I taught third grade, just regular classroom, self-contained, not self-contained, but we didn't change classes or anything like that. So I had the same group of kids all day long, all year long. And I worked at schools, though, that were partners with our state's arts commission. So I had this like background in the arts from the get-go. From when I did my student teaching, I was always expected and learning about how to teach that way. And about 6 years into teaching, I got an offer to go to another school across town to be the art teacher. So I was teaching first grade, and these principals asked me to come over there because they wanted me to kind of lead an arts integration initiative with them. So they wanted me to kind of bring what we had at our other school over there. And I did. But when I got over there, y'all, I had no idea how inequitable the arts could make us to schools. Like the school I came from, the arts were just oozing through the cinder block walls. And at this other school, they barely had any arts programming, and there wasn't like artful displays, things like that. And so it just broke my heart. And I think I grew up that year. Like I grew up as a person that year. And that's when I first started, learning about everybody didn't grow up and have what I have. And that's embarrassing to say. I was in my 20s. I have already been teaching for 6 years, but that was a huge turning point for me.
Don't be embarrassed, because I had that experience as well in different aspects of my life. And I'm like, how could I not know all this? But when we know better, we do better. And I think we seek experiences to help ourselves grow. So please don't be embarrassed. I honor and I appreciate you sharing that.
It's authentic. I think it's important to be transparent. And so that's important to me. But when I got to that school and I just saw how the inequity, I had never considered myself a leader at all. Like they wanted me to come because I was interested in teaching art. Not because I had like all these exceptional leadership skills. I had not been doing anything except teaching first grade. Like I lead in my classroom, but not a school leader or community leader. But boy, when I got over there, I could not accept it. I could not accept the difference. And something changed in me, and like a fire got lit. And I just jumped off the cliff. I was like, I'm going to talk to whoever will listen to me. I'm going to write in any space I can find that will let me write. I even started my own blog. And anyway, just snowball. And I worked like that for like 7 years, trying to get as many people to listen to what I was saying and what was going on. And we really built that school up and changed the complete culture of that school. But from there, I never intended, like I never sat down and said, oh, let me find all about social emotional learning. It just is such a natural fit for the arts. I didn't even have to think about it. It just connected. And so just like I was teaching about art, or trying to find as many people as I could to listen to me about arts integration, it just became my mission to get that into the hands of as many kids as I possibly could. I feel like that, like, kind of SEL kind of came under that umbrella for me too. So did I answer the question, or did I go off on a tangent?
No, you answered it
Yes.
for me, Craig.
Yeah, I have like 15 more questions to go, but I know I'm quelling it, but if I could ask one more question. So for those who have no clue what your day-to-day looks like, could you just kind of give us a feel for what is your day-to-day experience like right now? I mean, I'm so excited to hear about this Ignite that you have going on.
So about 3 years ago, you remember when I said that I was determined to like get this into the hands of as many people as possible, and I would not stop talking about it to anybody that would listen? Well, about 3 years ago, it got out of control. Like, I could not keep juggling the full-time classroom and like going from one school to the next, going from one conference to the next, training this, and I just couldn't do it. And I had started a family during this time too. So I left the classroom full time to do like specific work with our arts commission and work on my own. So I have a Party in the Art Room website where, yes, Party in the Art Room. And I named it that because it's about trying to bring the joy back, which is what the arts are about, trying to bring the joy back to the classroom. But so now I work with schools all over my state, but I work with schools in other states too. I've worked with schools in Los Angeles and Virginia, just on arts integration. And a lot of times it looks like me talking to teachers and training them on some specific things. Like, they may call me and they may say, we cannot get our students to understand such and such standard, and we got to try something different. And I'll say, I know what you can try. Let's do an arts integrated lesson, which I wish it would become the norm that people would do that first and then try worksheets if that doesn't work, which it will work. But anyway, they'll say, can you work with, and I'll design a training and a lesson, and I'll teach the teachers how to go back in and teach, and I'll follow up with them. And I have a lot of schools asking for SEL and the arts trainings. Like, what can we go into our classroom with and use the arts to kind of develop these skills in our students? So it requires, I do a lot of writing on a daily basis. I do a lot of just talking to people too. And training.
May I ask a follow-up then to what Craig is saying? So I was a former high school social studies teacher. And for me, when I thought about the arts in my classroom, it involved a lot of music of the time periods, or looking at political cartoons, some type of creation where they're creating booklets on what they've learned and adding in their own pieces. And I'd love to know, arts is a pretty broad category. Can you tell me some specifics about what the arts mean to you at any grade level or in any classroom?
Well, do you mean what they mean to me personally, or what I consider to be art? Because I consider anything is art. Like, from being able to come up with a joke and make people laugh to, cooking and making it look nice, like putting together like a spray of flowers or whatever. There's art and design and everything, to this chair I'm sitting on, to the shelf that you have behind you, Krista. It's everywhere. But to me, I grew up, this goes back to me realizing how some people didn't have this. I grew up with my whole family was a whole bunch of bluegrass musicians. My dad played the banjo, and we traveled around to bluegrass festivals when I was little. And I grew up with these artsy fartsy people who they had like office jobs, but then on the weekends, and like it was just arts festival after arts festival, and sit down with your grandmother and play the piano with her, sit down. You couldn't have a family gathering where people didn't just bring all their instruments, and you'd have people just sitting around talking like with dulcimers in their laps. Like, I just was so lucky to have that background. It made me who I am. Having that. And I also went to a school where we had a pretty decent arts program at the elementary level. I mean, it was kind of embedded in everything they did. That made me who I am. And that made me empathetic, and it made me be able to look inside myself and change when I needed to. And it just has made me be successful, and it gives me an outlet to work through things when I need to work through something. And just realizing that everybody doesn't have that. Everybody doesn't just come into the world with that, and that we as educators have the power to give that to them. The arts mean a whole heck of a lot to me.
It sounds to me like at Resonance Ed here, we say SEL is who you are and what you do. And I think you completely embody that. Like it seems to be the lens through which you view everything. It is a part of who you are. And I love that description. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add, I was a grade 5 teacher, grade 4 teacher, grade 3 all boys teacher, and many other iterations if we had time. There are some videos of me out with a boombox running around a school, and just like, I think it was homecoming, like Beyonce or something like that. I am very known for infusing music and artistry in different spaces, because I understood that music and art are part of a healing path as well.
Yeah.
And so when you understand that that's a tool for good, and you like part of your superpower kit, like the possibilities are endless, right? And
Right.
so I'm sure that in the work that you do, you are really helping teachers to understand how they can leverage so many of those tools. I'm throwing a question in that Krista doesn't know I'm going to ask, but I'm curious. What would you consider to be your superpower in regards to teaching, supporting other teachers or young people? What do you consider to be your superpower?
I think you asked the hardest questions, but I would say if I had to be, I'll put on the spot about that and didn't have time to think about it, I would maybe say relationship building, connecting. I didn't mention this earlier. I do work with a lot of teachers, but a lot of what I do too is I will go to a school and I will walk into a room cold and I'll teach an arts integrated lesson. And I don't know who's going to be in that room. I don't know what they know, what they don't know. I don't know who is supposed to be a behavior problem and who's not. I don't know any of that. I just go in there and I teach. Yeah. And I have to be able to make connections with those students. And that has to be like the number one thing on my mind, like making eye contact, which I know it's not all, every culture doesn't value that, but trying to find a way to connect. And sometimes it's just having a respectful tone, or realizing, oh, I didn't say that correctly. Let me rephrase it so y'all can understand it better. It was me. I didn't say it right. Just being a human when you get in there with those kids, letting them see you be a human. I think I had this one experience, and I wouldn't have probably said that about myself before I had this experience, but I was at a school in South Mississippi. It would have been before the pandemic, so it's a couple of years ago, but I walked in, I taught a lesson on like propaganda that was used in artwork during the Boston Tea Party in that time period. It was with fifth graders. And it was great. It went so good. I was like, I walked out. I always go in thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And then I come out and I'm like, nailed it, but
love those feelings.
It's horrible at first. It's scary, and then you come out and you're like, why did I lose sleep over that? But the teacher chased me down the hall later, and she's like, I had thought the teachers were back there like just chit-chatting and not watching me, because they're supposed to be watching me and taking notes. But I thought that's what they were doing. But she came and she was like, we were all like, look at him. He is participating in the discussion. She's like, you didn't know this, but we put every behavior problem we had in that one room to see what would happen. And I don't know why you would do that, or that mentality but she's like, he was listening, he participated, he had things to say that were relevant to the conversation. She said, and that's what we were talking about back there. But it's that, and I really had to reflect on that. Like, why would she say that? What was it about that lesson and how it went, and I think it was about trying to find ways to connect and being a human in the room with them.
And I think what a blessing for those teachers to see a different side of that child. Because I think that, and I'm not saying this is right, but in my experience, especially when I was a younger teacher, where you come to expect a certain type of behavior because you experienced it a couple times. And later on in my career, I learned to just wipe the slate clean, and it's a fresh start all the time because they're children. But you helped give that child a fresh start in the eyes of those teachers. And what a powerful legacy or like piece to leave behind there. And I want to connect that to something else that you've said, because I know this is your word, your philosophy is there is a social emotional input output relationship with art.
Yep.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because it seems like this story is connected to that.
So I use this in one of my trainings that I have where we focus on the work of Norman Rockwell. And I have 5 of his works that just really kind of hone in on each of the 5 tenets, I guess you could say, of social emotional learning. But I start that training off saying there's an input to creating art. The artist is putting like their feelings, their emotions, their thoughts, whatever's going on in their mind into the artwork. And a hand is stuck in my pocket, y'all. Okay. Edit that out, please. So there's an input where the artist is putting feelings, emotions, materials, time, and resources, and all that stuff into the artwork. But there's an output too when someone looks at the artwork. What is that putting out? Or the output is what the artist is. I've messed up. The output, it was what the artist is putting out into the artwork. The input is what it's putting into the viewer. Mm-hmm. So there's that relationship. And that is what people, when you talk to people about art, it's like, oh, you look at art, you make art. And it's like, that is basically all they think of. They don't know it's much deeper than that. But when you're a human and you have that human relationship with students, you're also there's output. You're pouring your what you know and the way you think and your values, and you are giving of yourself to the students, and they're taking that in. I don't know if that answered your question. I got distracted when my hand got in my pocket and I messed the input output up.
Well, I think I would say you're fine. I just wanted to add on, because Norman Rockwell is definitely one of the painters that I studied. He has a couple of pieces that really stand out to me when I think about social emotional learning and the arts integration. One is like the problem we all live with, right? And so this is a particular painting focused on Ruby Bridges. It really is centered on back in Louisiana. And what that picture does is it raises so many different questions around diversity and empathy and how do young people see themselves? How do they see Ruby Bridges and just their social awareness? And then when you look at the painting by that's called, I think, Young Lawyer, right? And so
I used both of those in that workshop. Both of them.
Right. And so this lawyer is actually Abraham Lincoln. So it opens up a lot of questions around how did Abraham Lincoln manage the stress of being a lawyer, thinking about self-management as an SEL competency. And there's all of these questions that are derived around what is his motivation? Did he set the kind of goals? How does he manage the stress of being a lawyer? And then, soon to become president. But how does one do this? So it was really cool to just kind of hear you talk about that and think about the ways that you can integrate the SEL competencies into such beautiful work.
I love that. The problem we all live with for working on social emotional stuff, because when I was first asked to do a training around this concept of Norman Rockwell, because I had written an article about this way back, and then a school got a hold of the article and wanted a training based around this. So I developed one, and when I it was for a school in South Mississippi. And I said, oh, what an opportunity, because Mississippi is still dealing with a lot of things that we were dealing with during the time that painting depicts. And I could have cowered away from it, and I could have changed the painting to something easier to talk about that I would have been a lot more comfortable talking with teachers in Mississippi about. But I said, no, we have to talk about this, and maybe I can do something that give these teachers some tools to talk about it too. That painting is that is the cornerstone to that training for me.
One of the things that I really appreciate that you talked about is the cyclical nature of SEL, and that the artist is self-aware and manages, but in their communication of themselves, they're connecting to other people. Yeah. And so it's how the art is seen and internalized, and then it comes back in because you're internalizing it and you're having thoughts and feelings as well. And you both just talked about this word identity, which I think is important because it's also under self-awareness. And Amanda, how you described yourself as an artist and how it's a lens through which you view the world really comes back to your identity, I think. And you're also providing an opportunity for young people to see themselves as artists because of the way that I think you defined art, which I love so much because it really expanded my view of how I see art. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that label of being an artist and how that influences young people and their creativity and their curiosity, which is also a part of SEL?
I told you all about how I grew up around all these artists, but I never saw myself as an artist. My best friend growing up was a legit artist. She was the youngest person to ever have a show at the local museum or whatever. She was in the paper all the time for her art, and she was my best friend. So I just was in her shadow, and I never saw myself as an artist. I knew I was kind of an artsy fartsy person, but to say I was an artist did not happen until I was well into my 20s. So
I thinking about how you were thinking about yourself as an artist or not, but your view of art and how you integrate it gives students an opportunity to think of themselves as artists. And curiosity is part of responsible decision making, and so you're helping them see themselves differently.
For me, so before I was able to really start thinking of myself as an artist, I was miserable, really and truly. I was not happy with the choices I made. I loved education, but I wasn't in the right part of education. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I liked teaching, but I felt like I was supposed to be doing something else. And until I started really getting into the art, I just wasn't self-actualized, honestly. And then once I got there, I could see it in everything. And so responsible decision making. Artists have to make decisions constantly, just when they're doing, if you want to just talk about when they're in the act of making art, but honestly, they're always in the act of making art because their brain is always thinking about it. But responsible decision making, one decision after another, but then you have to live with those decisions too. And that's a huge thing for kids because I don't know if y'all have experienced this, but they will ask you for a new sheet of paper 75 times. They will erase something 400 times, and they think it goes away, but it doesn't when you use a pencil eraser. So making those decisions, if they don't think before they make a mark on the paper and they hate that mark, well, you have to live with that. That seems trivial, but it's really not, because those small ways that they start to have to regulate and think before they act, or how is it going to affect someone else if I use all the blue paint and don't use any of the other colors? Those are small things that kindergartners start working on that are social, emotional skills. And the more you talk about and engulf people in an arts environment or an arts culture where it's a safe place for them to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and be who they really are, be with these glasses and this red eyeshadow, this is who I am, will show up like this. But I wouldn't have before I felt safe and comfortable before the arts were such a big part of my life, but that's how you create whole human beings. That's where it comes back to. It's all connected. Like, I don't know how can you not see how everything is connected? It's not, I mean, I taught visual art, but I taught human beings. Like, when we needed to do math to make the art, we did. When we needed to talk about social studies or science, we did. And then I made sure I had 600 students a year, but I got to know them in as many families as I possibly could. I learned their names. I did whatever it took for me to make those connections. And I taught teamwork in my lessons. I built time for them to talk to each other. And then if I saw that there was I use this all the time when I train teachers. I would tell the kids, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do it. I'll model it for them. I let them watch me, go through all that. And then I say, but what's going to happen is I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to watch you guys and I'm going to listen. Just like a basketball coach would tell his team what they need to do and then say, okay, team, go out there and do it. And then if they don't do it, he's going to be like, oh, time out, call everybody back in and they're going to talk about it, figure it out and go try again. And I taught like that was explicitly teaching all these human skills through, but even though I was a, visual art teacher, that was my subject area, but I taught all the other stuff because when you integrate things, you can hit all that at one time. You really can.
Yeah. Michelle Obama says art is the nation's most precious heritage, right? And so it reveals so much about who we are, and it helps others to see, so many beautiful like flecks of golds and rouges and so many parts of us that are in, just bigger than life. And so the art provides such an opportunity for us to engage in such rich explorations of ourselves, each other, the world around us. And it's pretty powerful. I am curious, who inspired you? I mean, you are like the art, you know what, Mississippi Art Teacher of the Year at one point in your journey. And so who inspired you to say, hey, I am going to take this up. I'm really going to do this. I'm going to take on this art journey. I'm going to be on fire for young people and the teachers around them to do this work. Who set you on fire? What a great adult did that for the world? Because we get an opportunity to talk with you.
I mean, until you said what great adult, the only thing that I was thinking was those kids that first year I taught at Lawhorn.
Okay.
And
tell us a little bit more about that.
Ryan, I couldn't look in their little. I had these two girls. They were twin sisters. They were in the same class, and they were I think they were at least 2 years older than the other students in the grade level and the 5th grade at this point. And they would look up at me with this fear in their eyes, like afraid to try. And whoever had been there before me, and I do not know who it was, but whoever had been there would just let them sit and not do the art. And so, this is the school where these people were at for 4 years. So for 3 years, they had been doing that. And then they were just this fear, how, and I remember thinking, how can you be afraid to try to draw a sea turtle when I'm showing you how the shapes go? But they were so afraid they couldn't do it. They'd been told so many times they couldn't do anything right. And I stayed in trouble a lot and had a hard time at home. And I couldn't look at that inspired me. Years later, y'all, and I thought that they hated my guts. I thought they hated me that whole year. Years later, I saw them at Walmart and I was like, oh, I better not. I'm going to go this way because, I don't think they liked me when I taught them and I don't want to disturb their peace or my peace. They chased me down into the parking lot. And you were always so good to me, Miss Koonlaba. And it was 7 years later. And I don't know, but that working with them at the time, those students who would look with fear in their eyes because they were afraid to try something, and knowing how unfair that is for anybody, nobody should have to feel that way, especially not at a public school in this country. And that inspired me. That made me want to be on fire for students. I also had an amazing principal at that school who trusted me, and I would say, I have this idea, I want to try this, and she'd say, go try it and let me know how it goes, which is rare, I think. We had a really good relationship, and her name was Corliss Curry, and she was amazing, and she really inspired me. And I think just being able to say that I saw those kids that I thought hated me because I made them actually draw the sea turtles, even though they were afraid. I thought they hated me for it. Come back and tell me how much it meant to them. And I was always good to them. And I don't know, like that makes me get teary eyed thinking about, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And you brought that up. You brought that up for me.
He's good at that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of some of the research around relationships and from the developmental assets and developmental relationships from the Search Institute. And they find that students need care, but they also need challenge. And those are words from the students. They want us to care, but they also want us to stretch them. And you said it perfectly earlier, in a safe environment where they can experience like these years, but not that it's going to shake their world, and that it's going to be okay, and that you believe in their ability so that you're willing to stretch them, move beyond their perceived limitations and comfort levels.
And if they can think through like small decisions, like which colors they're going to use in their artwork, then later they can think through more complicated, more things that have, more potential to impact them in different ways. And it's just huge.
Yeah. When you think about, for teachers out here today listening to us, if they say, I want to do this more, I want to take a step out of my own comfort zone and start to integrate the arts, where would you recommend they start? Or what is an easy entry point for them to kind of stretch themselves as educators and begin to integrate the arts and SEL into their work?
The access point is to start by looking at artwork. You don't have to make a thing. And it doesn't even have to be complicated artwork. You don't have to know how to pronounce the artist's name. You don't have to have a whole lot of contextual information about it. If you will pull up something to look at, even if it's an illustration from a book, that's a good access point. You don't have to go find an art print. Just pull up a picture from the book you're reading and say, okay, let's talk about the colors. And then you can speculate, why did they use those colors? The yellow, what does the yellow help us? What does that tell us about the story? What is, this is, using illustrations to comprehend text, but that's the access point. And then shapes too. And because everybody, most people, especially children, are going to have some background knowledge about color and shape. And a minute ago, we were talking about that group of kids, that first group that I had in 5th grade, where there were the two sisters, and we were talking about empathy. And I had written down something that I wanted to share, and it kind of goes back with that. I had this, one of my favorite paintings is The Potato Eaters by Vincent van Gogh. I just love that painting. I'm just drawn to it. I love hot pink, and that painting is dark browns and dark green and gray. So I don't know why I'm attracted to that painting, but it's uncommon for me. But it's one of my favorites. So I wanted to share it with my class of students, and I just wanted to talk about it. We really weren't going to make anything after we talked about it, but I wanted to talk about it. And I put it on the screen in my room. And the very first thing that happened was, ooh, like, oh, and they were telling each other stuff. And you could just hear them. They were just saying all kinds of ugly things about, that's what we say in the South. It was ugly what they were saying. They were saying horrible things about the people in that painting because the people in that painting are poor and they are gaunt. They look sick. They probably have, they're poor. They were potato people, farmers. And I learned this is what I was going back to. I learned so much from that first group of kids I had at that school when I transferred. I learned from that session where they were horrified at what they were seeing in this picture. I learned a way to use that to develop some an empathetic response in them, because what I did not expect them to do that, honestly, or I would have set it up differently. But I'm glad it happened that way, because after they had their, horrified response to it, which I was horrified that they were saying those things. I said, okay, now let me tell you what I know about these people in this painting. They're poor. They're working from sun up to sundown. Yes, they're dirty because they've been farming potatoes. All they have to eat is potatoes. They're not getting all the nutrients they need. That's why their faces look gaunt. That's why their parts, he's portrayed them maybe as their face, their noses are bigger than the rest of their face because they're so thin. And so I explained to them what the people might have been experiencing in that artwork, and they were ashamed. They were so ashamed that they had reacted the way they did. They showed me that they could be empathetic after they had some more information. So I used that way with that particular painting. I'd show it to them and I let them, because it shows the kid how horrible they can be to each other when they don't take a minute to listen and find out what's going on with the other human. And just seeing them be just mortified that they had reacted the way they did and said the things they did. I think that speaks a lot to the power of using just an art print. You don't have to make anything, but to develop some empathy in kids and adults. I've done that with adults too. That same thing, that same lesson.
I think your willingness to share that story is also powerful. And the story of the people in the painting. There's a researcher from Hofstra University on Long Island, Dr. Karen Osterman, and she started researching mean girl middle school behavior. And then she expanded it to everybody. And oh, geez, I remember middle school mean girl behavior. But what she found out after looking at all middle schoolers and high schoolers and adults is the more I know about you, the less likely I'm even to think about hurting you.
Yeah. Oh.
And so
look at me getting emotional again. That's the whole point of that painting, using that painting that way, because it shows them, oh, I reacted terribly before I knew anything about those people. And now I know I would never do that. Now that I know, that's such a good, powerful lesson. And it took me 5 minutes to do that lesson. That's an access point too, because teachers they have so much on their plates. Can you find 5 minutes? Could you do it while you're when your kids are lined up and you're waiting to transition? You can find 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it also opens up the opportunity to ask some different kinds of questions too. So who's around your table when you eat every day? Talk to me more about, what is it that you do at the table? Does everyone sit at the table? Is it your grandma? Is it your nana? Who sits at the table? What other stories that you have told to your family or discussed over your family? And so that's how you get to have those cultural explorations. And then you revisit it back. So what would your family look like, in a similar depiction? Can you draw your own? What are the things that are inspired by you?
It opens the door. It's that what we're talking about for the last 10 minutes, access points. Open the door for all of those other really powerful, meaningful conversations and connections that can be made.
And just so that our listeners see that tight connection, that identifying your cultural and social strengths and identities is part of self-awareness. And my husband is 100% Italian, and I grew up in a larger family, and whatever my mom made, we all ate or we didn't eat. And it reminds me of a couple months ago, I cooked a meal, and I don't like cooking. It's not art to me. It's very stressful. And I made a dinner. I actually made 2 meals because I knew two of the kids didn't like seafood. Well, he came home having bought chili at the local supermarket and was like, and we have chili. And oh, if you don't like this, I'll make it's a Spanish dish of kind of like an empanada. And I got so upset. I'm like, I just cooked all these meals and you came in with like, I'll make this. And I realized it was a cultural mismatch from the way that we grew up.
My
And
husband,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, please.
I was just saying, this happens to me all the time because I grew up in the South where my mom or the female cooked the meals and everybody sat at the table and everybody ate what was cooked. And you ate all of it. And it was Southern cooking. Like sometimes we might get adventurous and have like spaghetti or something. My husband is from Thailand and they just, here's all the things and choices and we're going to have this meal and I might cook noodles in 2 hours. Like it took a lot for me to figure out how to look at that like like it's a cultural difference. It's not like he didn't want to eat my cooking. It's just different. I had to learn that. Like I love that you said that because I literally was just telling my mom about this the other day, trying to explain it to her.
Yeah, and I think like I was really upset, and I'm like, it didn't feel right for me to be upset at him. I couldn't name it right away, and it took a couple days for me to realize it was a cultural difference, and just the way I was raised, the norms were different at the table. But like Craig said, what a great opportunity if you have more than 5 minutes to really open up the dialogue and conversation and opportunities to learn more about each other and their cultural social norms.
Well, as I have a response to that about the 5-minute thing. The pushback I get is we don't have time to do art stuff because we have to take a test at the end of the year and assessment. So I'm always like, well, let's find 5 minutes. If we find 5 minutes today to talk about the potato eaters as educators who are supposed to be reflective practitioners, we're supposed to go home at night and go, now tomorrow I'm going to bring back up the potato eaters and we're going to keep going in the 5 minutes. And then the next 5 minutes, it's juggle those balls. You can do it. Like you can find 5 minutes and then you can find 5 more minutes. And I believe that with because that is how I taught. And I'm not saying I was the best teacher ever. I was, just like any other educator. I had bad days, bad years, good years. But overall, I look back on my teaching career and I felt like it was pretty successful. So it can be done. I'm standing here to tell you, I know it can be done. And I don't want to I'm just going to throw this in here for y'all, not for everybody, but I don't ever want to hear, my kids can't do it because their behavior is so bad. That's a whole different podcast hour.
Come back. Come on back. The door is always open.
There was one question about that was, what is one essential takeaway?
Mm-hmm.
I had written down, the arts are the key to change. And this is why there's so much pushback to it, is because some people don't want things to change. I'm sitting in Mississippi where I just shared with you, and it's hard for me to talk about because this is my home. But in a lot of ways, we're still it's still 1960 here in a lot of ways, or before here. The art's the key to change. I know that's where pushback comes from. But you have to think about the change that the arts have brought about historically, like music revolutions that artists have led and participated in and fueled. Things don't get better unless artists are involved. And so what I want people to hear from me is, if a leader or an educator is really serious about change, positive change, making the world a better place, equity, you got to embrace the arts. We can't do it without the arts. The arts are not fluff. The arts are the fuel. And if you are not sold yet. There's hard data on that. I can share that.
Amanda, thank you
At another
so
time.
much. There were so many amazing nuggets from there. And I saw Craig snapping, and I can't wait to go back in and to pull these pieces out because people need to hear them. One, how are we supporting the identity development of our young people? How are we using the arts to hit all 5 SEL competencies and in a way that is doable? You've proven to us that this is doable.
Yes.
It's being explicit about it and doing 5 minutes a day, even just a starting point, and opening up.
Please do more. Be my guest to do as much as you want to, but at least do 5 minutes. Dadgummit.
Yes. Yes. And so we want you to come back on because I still have more questions. I know Craig has more questions. We want to let all of our listeners know that we are sponsored by Pennsylvania ASCD. We have our state conference coming up next month. You can still register to attend. It's in Hershey, PA. And so check the links in the resources along with Amanda's contact information. And I'm going to use a word that you say, y'all, because we say use or you in being plural. You need to follow her on social media and Party in the Art Room. Go grab those resources, connect, continue learning more. And I am going to throw it over to Craig because, Craig knows how to wrap us up and send you on your way.
All right, y'all. Sending y'all love and light from Krista, Amanda, and I. And if nothing else, just make sure you stand in the light.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yay!